Okay. Thanks everyone for being here tonight. My name is Rosa Carson. I am the program manager for the engineering, onboarding, and training and evaluation program that we have at Wayfair. It's called Wayfair Labs. We have had Wayfair Labs for just shy of 2 years at this point. Our first class was in April of 2017, so it was April of 2015. I have slides that have a whole bunch of words on them, but I'm not going to read them. And in fact, I'm going to sort of fly through this because I think the more interesting part of our conversation is going to be the questions that you all have to ask. I first also want to introduce my teammates who are here. This is Matt Gay, who is a manager in our engineering team. He has received people out of the Wayfair Labs program, and Billy Yao went through Wayfair Labs this summer. So you sort of get a bit of a survey with all three of us to hear a little bit at least about the whole gamut of the experience. Before I dive into that, I just want to sort of have a brief cheerleading moment about how awesome Wayfair is. So the Wayfair engineering team has about 800 engineers and data scientists in it at the moment. We have approximately doubled in the last year, and most of those people came through the Wayfair Labs program. So Wayfair Labs has really allowed us to bring on a lot more people than I think we would have been able to do if we had been onboarding them in a more traditional way. Things that I really like about Wayfair are this sort of ability that we somehow have managed to do, I honestly don't really know how, of remaining reasonably nimble for the size that we are. Obviously, like a big organization has a certain amount of momentum that makes it, we can't exactly compare to a startup, but we've done a really good job of empowering individuals to make the decisions about their own goals and how to execute the tasks that are given to them, which means that we can move really fast as an organization, and also I think really empowers people to feel like they really are getting to make the interesting decisions that are related to the work they're doing. And that is unique in my experience. So I just wanted to put a little toot our horn a bit about that. So we have, as I said, we've hired almost 400 people through Wayfair Labs in the first 18 months. We have complete data through the October of 2016 class. Because the program is a 3-month program, we have a little bit of latency in the information about the folks coming through who are in the sort of active classes. I'm actually going to skip this slide and come back to it and actually first talk about what the structure of the program is. And I'm not going to go into too much detail about the applicant process, although if you have questions about that, you should definitely ask them when we get to that part. The part I'll talk a little bit more about is the part that I think really is unique about what we're doing in Wayfair Labs, which is it's this basically 2-month onboarding program where folks come in a cohort. We are currently bringing in groups of 10 a month per cohort, and they'll do 2 4-week-long full-stack web development projects where we introduce them to the coding standards of the most frequently used languages inside of Wayfair. We introduce them to the various developer tools and analytics tools and et cetera that they'll need when they join a team. And we try to bring them up to speed. And because we have this program, it really allows us to bring people on board who don't necessarily have a proven track record, or people who have sort of non-traditional backgrounds in software engineering, and we can get everyone up on the same page and sort of ready to hit the ground running when they join a team. We think that it really lightens the load on receiving managers, and we think it improves the candidate experience. We can hear from Matt and Billy for their perspectives on that. So that is a quick and dirty overview of Wayfair Labs, and then I'm going to go back and talk a little bit about how it is that we got there. Basically, as any of you who are trying to hire software developers here in the Boston area know, it can be very tough to find the talent that you need. It's a very hot market, and especially when you're hiring people who have not had an engineering job before, it's hard to know if someone is going to be a good fit. Are they going to be able to be productive? Are they going to be able to join such a large team? And we think that sending people through labs gives everyone a great trial experience and also helps everyone sort of reach a similar level of expectations during the time that they're in it, so that when they join a team, it's a better experience across the board. This also has allowed us to be a very welcoming hiring organization for people who are taking a more non-traditional path into software engineering. So we're always really excited to get mid-career changers, and we often have those folks come through labs. And obviously we also have people coming through who have computer science degrees, and we love hiring people through General Assembly and similar boot camp programs. So that's sort of where we got there, and I'm gonna stop now and move us into more of the conversational part. I'm sure there are other things that people are curious to hear about, but I don't know what they are, so you tell me.
When students or when employees go through, are they hired into headcount that's been held back for them?
Yes, so the way we do it is we hire people as full-time software engineers starting on day one. So we look at you as a full-time regular employee who we expect to stay with us through Wayfair Labs and into Wayfair Engineering. In fact, not everyone passes through. We do have a couple of gates in the program, and so we have a pass rate currently overall of about 85%. But we think of people as full-time employees from day one.
So are many of these employees on day one have they been previous interns?
No, that's a good question. So the question was, that's right. So do people go through Wayfair Labs who've been interns? We do hire people through our internship program, but if you've been an intern, you don't go through labs.
Does every engineer go through Wayfair Labs, or?
Good question. No, so the question is, does every engineer go through Wayfair Labs? And every L1 engineer goes through Wayfair Labs. So if this is your first or possibly second software engineering job, or if you were a software engineer 10 years ago and then you went to build furniture and now you're back to software engineering, you need a little more training before you're ready to hit a team, those are the folks who go through Wayfair Labs. We are in the process of working on a sort of similar program for our mid-level engineers, but it would be shorter and less intensive.
Have you considered, or do you plan to use this program for other roles besides engineers?
Yes. So the question is, are we considering or planning to do a similar program for other roles? And in fact, we are spinning it up for 3D visual artists at the moment, with our first class starting in February. And I think our data science team also is looking at spinning up a similar program.
At what point in the hiring process do you make the candidates aware that this is a program that they have to clear certain hurdles in order to get continue their employment?
That comes up typically in the first conversation with our recruiters. And certainly when they have the culture interview with me, that's something that I reiterate. That's the kind of thing that I would not want to surprise anyone with on the first day.
So just to piggyback off that, do you have something in the offer letter that says like the first, 2 months or 90 days is an introductory period where we're getting to know you, you're getting to know us, and then we'll evaluate afterwards? Is that written? Because I mean, I've done that before with candidates because of protection,
Yeah.
Is that, I would think that that's...
I know that we do have particular language in our offer letters. I don't remember specifically what it is, but since Massachusetts is an employment at will state, and it would happen that we would be letting someone go in their first 90 days, which is a very standard, pretty much every company, I think, does a 90-day pulse check or similar. Yeah. So we haven't worried too much about that, and it's never been a problem for us. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, my understanding is that we're fairly... Sorry. My understanding is that we're fairly humane when that happens as well. It's not sort of like they show up and like, see you later, you're out of here, oh, and you owe us, $20 for your computer time. Like, they let them go fairly gently with I believe, some amount of severance.
Yeah, we do offer a little bit of severance, and obviously we recognize that it's a very difficult experience to go through, trying really hard to succeed at a program and then not doing so, and it sucks to get fired, like there's no way around it. My hope is that people who go through the program get enough valuable experience that it sets them up well for a software engineering job in another company. And in fact, I do know that many of the folks who we've let go have successfully and pretty quickly actually found other software engineering jobs and feel like they got some valuable knowledge and experience out of their time in Wayfair Labs. So my hope is that even for the folks that we're letting go, it's overall a beneficial experience, even if, you know, obviously there's some emotional bruising that goes along with being let go. Yes.
Culture checks are always hard. I'd love to see how you do yours, and I'd like to offer up a colleague to do a mock culture, if you would. I'd love to see how you do it, right?
Sure.
So,
yeah. So my culture interviews typically last about 30 minutes, and I ask behavioral questions.
Perfect. I'm dying to hear how she answers.
I'm not sure that we have time for that right now. Is that right? But basically, I'm looking for the things that I'm looking for in a culture interview are a growth mindset. That is to say, someone who looks at difficult experiences as learning opportunities. Oh no, she's not going to make it.
But if she passed that.
Someone who's a good teammate, someone who is adaptable, someone who is good at critical thinking, and someone who has the ability to introspect and do some self-motivated teaching. So those are the things that I'm looking for in culture interview.
How do you find them? Like, what are some sample questions, or what do you throw out there?
Yeah, so for instance, I ask people to tell me about a time when they had to work with someone they found difficult. And so then I'm looking for a very specific, like, tell me a specific time, and then I want to hear how you handled it. What was the situation? Are you happy with how you handled it? I might ask some follow-up questions around that. What I want to see is that someone can understand that sometimes you have to work with someone you find difficult. B, that you might be able to engage in an ownership way with that challenge, right? I'm mostly looking for people who don't look at that as like, oh, this was so hard, and then I just went to my boss and let them deal with it. Although sometimes people have a story like that, and it's like, okay, I totally understand given that situation, that's how you handled that. So I have a series of sort of specific, tell me about a particular time. It doesn't have to be from work. Especially since so many of the folks that we hire are coming out of undergrad, I typically will say to them, I'm looking for specific examples, but they can come from a previous job or internship, they can come from school or a class, they can come from a club or team or social organization or really any context. But I want a specific example that falls into this category.
Do you find that the people coming out of your labs program stay longer than people that you recruit off the street?
That is a great question. We don't have enough data to know yet. So that's something that we are starting to look at. We have now enough data in terms of heads, but not enough data in terms of time. So ask me again in a year and a half.
When the candidates are going through Wayfair Labs, do you try to integrate them within the existing culture of Wayfair, or do they kind of feel segmented?
I'm going to hand this over to Billy for his experience.
Yeah, so again, it's a 2-month, 8 weeks program, and the first 4 weeks, everyone kind of like worked on the same project, so it's the second half of the 8 weeks. In the way that we have lots of like interaction with existing employee, but the first 4 months like a bunch of onboarding sessions. So most of your interaction is going to within other people that you start out with. But as the group gets smaller right now, from what I've seen, because when I started, there was like 32 people, and now it's like only 10 per class. But my experience, because I know quite a few people who is currently started in the lab program, and they've been interacting with other lab class 1 people after them. And that's kind of how you get a culture, because as they continue to get placed in different part of the company, you kind of like, you're friends with them now. Like, get to know the other part of the company that you don't normally get exposed to if you hire a slightly higher level, which is like most of the time you you kind of get, not really pigeonholed, but like, that's the only department you have seen. But once you have like, I know I have resources in like storefront and like, in product catalog or infrastructure, so I know how you kind of like get a feeling with their teams, like, and you might get to know the people that might seem fit. So in a way, like yes and no. Like you get to know the people you started out really well because you guys are all going through the process together. But at the same time, you do have interaction with other people in other parts of the
As someone that has, whose developers are, an in-demand job, how do you choose to, take a job where you may or may not have a job in 90 days at a, at a company like Wayfair versus, startup where you'll probably be someone that they're leaning on pretty heavy, pretty quickly. Like, how do you make that decision? Like, hey, this is kind of a leap that I'm taking in a big company versus.
Well, so for me, I actually came from one of the non-traditional backgrounds. I used to work as a material engineer for like 8 years before I started actually the intensive program here at Sorry. So I used to be a material engineer for 8 years. Then I actually started the web development intensive at General Assembly before transitioning to a development job. And my previous career, I have worked with small, medium, large companies. And just personally, I decided a bigger company would fit my personal need a little bit more. And so that is something that I target at the beginning. But it's time, it's like, you don't really think about going to a job that I'm going to get fired. That should never be your mentality. And I don't think you want a candidate with that mentality to start out with. But the thing is, like, with the 3 months, I know that the 2 to 3 months program, I know that I'm not like getting thrown in, like start doing the work and without any help. Like I know this is like a program. There's a resource out there to help you to learn what the existing process is if you needed to. I think in a way it's a lot more supportive for someone like me who's just starting a new career. Like as a career changer, I have all the resources there that I needed to succeed right there. So that a huge driver definitely to choose Wayfair.
Yeah. I'll speak to that also. One of the things that I tell people when they're going through the process and they ask the question of like, why should I take this job that I could get fired from, is first of all, that's true of any job, right? We're just very upfront about it, and it's sort of built into the program. Second, we don't have any quotas. So we have had cohorts where 100% of people go from start to a team and are able to hit the ground running, and I think are all still there, in fact. And plenty of very prestigious and high-profile job categories. If you think about plenty of law firms sort of have an expectation of attrition year to year. In high finance, it's very common. In medicine, so it's not unusual. And basically, I say to people, if this is going to make you too anxious to be able to engage with the material and be successful or enjoy your time, then maybe this isn't the program for you. But if you feel confident in your skills and also like you can deal with it if it doesn't work out, then this is probably a great program for you. And we do find that it is motivating to people to sort of have that sense of like, okay, I really need to own my own experience and sort of drive my learning in order to pass through those gates.
So I'm going to flip that question a little bit. You said you hire some non-traditional candidates and young candidates.
Yeah.
What makes your team willing to take a chance on someone that doesn't, go down and ticker and have everything that you need 100%?
Yeah. So the question is, why are we willing to take some non-traditional candidates who might not look like they sort of check off all the boxes? My answer to that is that we think that the more diverse experience and perspective and insight that we can have represented in our team, the better answers to the problems that we're facing as a company we're going to come up with. So like we're trying to solve problems that people haven't solved in a new way in a long time, and we're not going to be able to do that if we just have a sort of basic cookie cutter of people who are coming in the door. So from my perspective, like the more varied people can come in with, representing knowledge and experience and backgrounds, the better, stronger team we're going to have. And that, I would say that perspective is represented across our leadership team.
also is really cheap. It's really easy to fire someone through labs, right? Like, that sounds terrible, but
No,
like,
that's true.
much like an internship program, if you've got a trial period, if it doesn't work out, like it's not nearly as big a deal on either side as it is with the regular employee.
What are some of the things that you've learned and changed in this program as you've gone along, and some of the things you continue to change as you're learning about how this works and how people react to it?
Yeah. So things that we have learned are classes can get too big. So last spring and summer, we were looking at group sizes of 30 to 40 people, and that became unwieldy pretty quickly and also led to a less good experience for basically everyone involved in labs. People, we call them labsters, who are going through the program, I think had a less good experience. Not that it was bad, right? Because,
I had a great time.
So I think that, it could be, but now that we've got the group size of 10, it's a more individual and personalized experience, which I think is preferable, and it's also a little more manageable for the receiving teams to get, okay, you're getting 1 or 2 people rather than, okay, here's your new group of 10. Good luck. So that's one. We have gone through a variety of example projects, and so we've done some tweaking of the projects to make sure that they are giving people the experience that we want them to have. We wind up using the labsters sort of as guinea pigs, and sometimes that works out really well, and sometimes it's a challenge. So we continue to tweak the content of the program, as well as we have people playing the role of technical mentors, these sort of mid-level engineers who are helping the folks going through the program to come up to speed on the technical skills that they need. And we have adapted the training for the folks in that mentorship role over time to make sure that they have, that they're imparting what we want them to impart. That's right. Okay.
So we want to keep the Q&A going, but we also want to give everybody in the audience a chance to talk to each other about what your programs are looking like and kind of create a sense of conversation, like in the audience as well. So we're going to bring up Matt, who's the Global Director of Talent at Monster. Oh, there he is. To help coordinate to facilitate that conversation. But by no means does that mean that we're taking away the conversation from Wayfair. They're going to stay here and they can kind of be a counterpoint to what you guys are working on individually at your company.
Let's give them a round of applause real quick. So who here believes that they are a disruptor in talent? Oh, like 3 people. Wow. We are awesome tonight. Well, the funny thing is, what we want to do, fantastic program, by the way, from what they're trying to bring in, L2, is that what L1. So fantastic. It's a great approach. But when you look at each of your organizations, we don't all necessarily have the ability to bring in this type of talent right out of the gate. So great question over here. I will counter Rosa here, I'm sorry, but I hate the notion of telling me more questions, because if you're going to do a behavioral interview, there has to be a business problem you're trying to solve. If you're trying to just solve a problem by asking a question, you're never going to get an answer. You have to actually present a real business problem in order to understand the behaviors that align to somebody to be able to get the answer you want. So, that's what I want you all to think about. As you look at the program that they presented you, I want, let's go row by row by row. So, the row that you're in, we're going to have 5 minutes as a group. I want you to discuss this in relation to what you do as an organization. And I'll ask each of you for 30 seconds to kind of come up with a solution that you all talked about that could probably work in your organizations. Maybe it won't, maybe it will. But I'll give you 5 minutes just to talk amongst yourselves. And it could work in your organization. It could be any counterpoints to what they presented, or it could be something to add to what they presented. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes starting now at 7:30 on the dot. I'll come back up here and I'll yell at you again, and we'll get this going underway, all right? Feel free to grab a beer or two, by the way. It loosens up the time. So we didn't have to talk for about 5 minutes. So I'd like a couple people from each group, again, quick 30 seconds. I really, I think we have bigger things to do, like have some more delicious pastries and Lagunitas. However, if a couple people from each group could just present quickly their findings. If you don't mind, when you stand up, you can give your name, company, and what you do there. That'd be fantastic. I'll give the first row the first step. Just split up?
Oh, yeah. Oh, sure. Hi, I'm Elizabeth Good. I work on the culture team at HubSpot, specifically on our new hire experience. One of the things we talked about was how this possibly could or maybe would never transfer to our sort of customer-facing roles, like sales, services, or even the one-off folks who are coming in and going right to their desk. Maybe don't have a traditional training module. So thinking about how you really create that cohort experience when it's not necessarily built around sort of a schedule or curriculum. Yeah.
Do you want me to say something?
I can answer that. So off of the Wayfair cohort, what we do is, especially in our sales organization, is more of an assessment style. So when we do hire to our sales organization, we hire a bulk amount of people. And when we did a new hire sales training class this year, we hired 15 people into our new sales hire training. We actually had specific metrics and specific marks they had to meet within the 12-week period. So when we got to the end of that, we were able to top grade the talent and really have in-depth discussions about their metrics, about their KPIs, and about their performance while they were there. And when they were hired under the notion that if they didn't hit the numbers, that they wouldn't be accepted as a full-time employee. And we kind of built that, but that really takes a lot of connection with sales ops, finance, sales commissions, and all those teams to help understand that data. But once we had that, we were able to understand which people actually made the cut, so to speak. But we had to set clear expectations up front about what the metrics were coming in so that we could, unfortunately, if they didn't make it, let it go. Does that make sense?
I think it's also, I guess, my question wasn't necessarily worded well, but how do you set that for folks who have more of a qualitative set of goals, set of 90-day plans? So for instance, we do at HubSpot as well have sales and services training, multiple choice test, project, etc. I come in as a culture person meant to create a feeling of hospitality for our new hires. So how do you encourage and create that sort of structured experience for the first few months without necessarily a set of regimented goals? Sorry, I'm gonna, everybody.
So she was asking about less from a metrics-driven standpoint, but more from a qualitative standpoint, from a culture fit, and that.
Not necessarily expecting the answer to that, just
sure, I can say So we have not done this in labs, but one of the things that we've talked about is having people do presentations, where they're working on a project and then come together as a group and do a presentation sort of about whatever the thing that they're working on is, which obviously tests communication and ability to put together compelling communication. So that's one thing that we have talked about and that we will be doing in the 3D visualization labs. So, that's another one where ask me in a couple months. But Matt also had a thought of another place that both he and I worked and how they did it, so.
Sure, I'll go ahead and name names here. Rosa and I both worked together at Athena Health in Watertown before we came here. So Athena had a really good onboarding process that consisted of like a week-long, very intensive onboarding, and it was across all cohorts and all job roles. So like, I remember my first day I showed up and I was like dressed like an engineer, like this, and like there were these like salespeople that were like dressed in suits and stuff, and I was like kind of freaked out. But as a consequence of that, we ended up building sort of these relationships across the company, and it helped to sort of indoctrinate us into the culture of the company, but also like there was a lot of interaction within the group, and I think that was key. Not all companies do that as well.
I've always been a huge advocate of letting them name themselves, right? I mean, I'm a military guy. I was in the Marine Corps, and I'll never forget, I was 2074, was my boot camp platoon number. Never will forget that my entire life. And that whole naming thing is like a culture piece, right? You're accepted as part of this group, this society, this community. So I'm always a big advocate of, your class X of monster, blah, 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 or blah, blah, blah. You guys split up, right?
No.
One group? All right, we'll just go right down. Second row.
I can pass this over, Matt, if you want.
You got me?
Second row, anyone?
Who's going to be the brave one? We need one brave solo.
Oh, okay. No?
No?
Third row?
Let's give you the third row. Thoughts?
Anybody
Anything?
here?
Okay, we got a volunteer.
Here we go.
Hi, Hi, Jen O'Neill from EIQ Networks. I'm the talent acquisition manager. So we talked a little bit about the different things that we're doing within our own companies, but I think the two things that came up that were a bit different is, so the two fellows here that are from Monster said that the engineers that they're hiring are not L1s, they're more experienced. So it's kind of more sporadic hiring versus hiring like a big class and putting them through a program like this. And then with my challenge with the whole activity here is that we're a small company, we're not hiring in bulk, but at the same time, I am really trying to put in place some metrics for like 30, 60, 90 days to make sure that if we're failing fast and identifying people that are high potentials as well. So I guess maybe if you could address how this program could scale in either a smaller company that isn't hiring as rapidly or in a larger company that maybe is hiring more experienced people.
Those are good questions. So I would say for a smaller company, what I would do if I were doing something like this is I would hire in batches less frequently. There's a real benefit to having a number of people come on together, and obviously this wouldn't necessarily work if you've got a team that's like, I need someone now, right? But if you can sort of look ahead and see, all right, well, over the course of the quarter, we're going to need 5 people, you could then conceivably put together a program for those 5 to all start on a sort of similar day. And then you get to give a cohesive experience, they get to bond with each other, they get to lean on each other and learn from each other. And so you get some of those benefits. That's the first thing that pops into my mind if I were trying to do this for a smaller organization or one that's hiring at a slower rate. And then, was your other question for a larger organization or bringing in?
Hiring more experienced people.
Oh, hiring more experienced people, thank you. For that one, I think that what you really would want to do is be very thoughtful about the content, right? What we're doing, the projects that we have people working on in Wayfair Labs are reasonably basic full stack web development projects. If we were bringing in someone more experienced, we could conceivably do the same projects but in a shorter amount of time. Or we might go into some kind of project that's more in-depth into the skill set that they have.
So just on a quick note, I want you all to keep this in mind. I mean, onboarding to what Wayfair is doing, I'm assuming you've been doing this a couple of years now, a few years, how long?
2 years.
2 years, right? So it took them probably...
So, if I may, we've had Wayfair Labs for just shy of 2 years, but prior to that we had a program called the Boot Camp program, and prior to that, the Apprentice program, both of which were variations on the theme, but didn't quite hit the way we wanted to go with it. So we've had a couple of like, oh, we tried this and it wasn't quite right. We got some great people out of it, but it was either too unwieldy or not a good experience for the people going through it. So we've had a couple of things that we tried and didn't work out. So I would say, that's a good thing to know that like you're not necessarily going to get it right off the bat. And part of what we're willing to do is try something and then decide it's not working.
Just to piggyback on what you're saying, so if you tried 4 or 5 iterations, I would think it was costly in terms of salaries, benefits, anything along those lines. How did you keep management engaged that this was a good idea?
The idea came from our co-founder. We have a real strong investment in innovation at Wayfair. Technical innovation, operational innovation, human resources innovation. So we recognize that you can have a good idea and like need to try it a couple different times. We also recognize that people are expensive and that's just the way it is, and that it's worth investing in that experience. And I'm not going to say that we're going to be doing Wayfair Labs in its current incarnation forever, because there's probably going to come a time when we're like, oh, actually we need to tweak this or change it, or this isn't serving our needs in the way that we wanted to. So you always want to be trying to make things that work well for you, and hopefully that investment pays off in the short and long term, but also you don't want to get so like wed to anything that you have happening, that you're not ready to let it go when it's time to try something new.
You kind of alluded a little bit earlier about the communication skills.
Yeah.
You mentioned that, which is a skill that some people need training on. Do you include that at all in any of your labs? Because oftentimes that's what's going to get someone a promotion versus not.
Yeah, that's a good question. So the question was, do we include communication skills in some of the programming that we do for labs? It is not formally part of the programming that we do, although that's something that we're looking at adding in, a sort of like, give a presentation about your project. We do ask people to put together a sort of narrative explanation of the tools that they've created, and that's part of their sort of final deliverable at the end of each month. That's written rather than interactive. So we're thinking about adding the interactive bit. So I manage everyone who is in labs during the time that they're in labs, and I give people individual feedback on how they're doing. And so when there's someone who has some, let's say, cultural challenges, whether it's communication or they don't really know how to put together a professional appearance, or they don't know, like people coming out of college often don't really know how to be employees, right? And so we don't want to treat them as being wrong if they just don't have that knowledge. So I do one-on-one sort of coaching and guidance around that kind of thing as needed.
Absolutely. So, and a huge part of communication from a technical standpoint is like how readable your codes are, and that is like constantly. That is actually being constantly, as like your ability to like write really clean code, people can read your code and all. It's constantly being validated during the whole labs process. It's constantly emphasized. I think in a way for technical people, that might be more important than say if they can give a presentation or not. Because I personally think like for an engineer who can give a presentation, that's like a bonus skill. But like if I can actually read this other person's work, more that is communication by itself. So.
Also, when they come out of labs, they actually know how to use Outlook, which is not a small thing.
I don't even know how to use Outlook. But keep in mind, right? So they've been at this for a few years now, right? I mean, they've been doing this for a while. And who in here is a recruiter? Raise your hand. Who in here cares about hiring millennials or Gen Zers? All right, it should be everybody. It's not, but it should be. At the end of the day, 76% of candidates are researching companies to get a job before they work for you. 76% will research you before they apply. Do you think this adds to the ability to attract talent? I say yes, right? Because you're attracting a niche talent market. By the way, passive-ish candidates, because they're not really passive, but they're not really active either. But 69% of candidates are not going to take a job at a company that has a bad reputation. Right? And if you're a millennial or a Gen Zer, you want to find a company that's going to be able to provide you with the ability to have career growth, to have training, to have development. And you're getting it out of the gate with a program like this. So whether you're doing something to scale of what Wayfair is doing, or whether you're trying to just fit in pieces at a time as a small business, right? Like we heard you earlier, it doesn't really matter. The point is that you're trying to create yourself from a recruiting perspective, an employment brand that's actually going to create the ideology of you being a destination employer. The battery died. So that people actually see you as a visible employer, visible enough employer that's credible. That's credible enough where they actually want to come to you. That's what I do. I don't do onboarding. I don't do programs. I hire people for a living. That's what I do working at Monster. And programs like this gives me the ability to attract talent at a higher level. You know, I mean, we have a program at Monster that's similar-ish. Right? But these type of programs build that credibility with the audience that, by the way, we're trying to attract. Millennials and Gen Z, that is the workforce within the next 3 to 5 years, period. Yes?
I just have a quick comment off of that. You said 76% of like people research companies before they apply.
Yes.
And yet when I talk to them, I say, tell me what you know about my company, and they can't answer, they're not going to get that far. So
They don't research that.
Okay.
They research Glassdoor.
Gotcha. They should know a little bit about who they're applying to. Do you agree?
To a degree, yes. I mean, you know, that kind of notion of, you know, it's weird because people going out and studying your company now doesn't happen as much. I see it all the time where candidates come in and they have no idea who you are. I don't, have that.
They're not gonna test me if they don't know.
I know.
No way.
And it's a little bit more difficult for me because I work at Monster.
Right.
Not a lot of people don't know who we are. Although they do ask if I'm Monster Cable or Monster Energy Drink, to which I say, I don't sell juice. You know, so, but, you know, people know the basics now, but
It goes back to the generation, right?
Yes,
So the
exactly.
millennials and the Gen X's, right? So they want to know culture, they want
Right.
to know when's their ratings, who's the CEO.
consistent development,
Baby,
right?
baby boomers and stuff, we're more about what do they do, how does it impact our company, our world, our environment, you know,
Yeah.
things of that nature.
Is the company and me gonna be successful?
Right,
together?
exactly, can we,
Correct.
is this something I believe in, if you're sales, if you're engineering, can I be? So I actually do think it's a difference between, which is a balance of being a recruiter.
Yes.
I want a little bit of the millennials, a little of the Gen X, a little bit of the baby boomers, right, to add that,
Yeah.
you talk innovation, but also that experience level.
Well, when you look at that audience, they care a lion's share more about crowdsourced content than they do about organic content. So whatever your company's content that they're pushing out, they believe it's corporatized and then it's not correct. What they want to see is that crowdsourced content that comes from Glassdoor, that comes from Kununu, that comes from these other outlets that provide content from people that actually work at these organizations, because that's the reality, right? They don't want to see your B-roll of somebody throwing a frisbee and somebody standing in front of a bunch of pancakes going,
I wouldn't want to work at a job without looking at their Glassdoor reviews. You know, like, I want to know what it's like to work there, because I want to work at a place where I'm going to be happy. So, you know, I'm also going to look at the company, but.
well, and to this, let's get back to the onboarding program, right? So when you look at programs like this, candidates come in interviewing to Wayfair, I would assume your recruitment team set the proper expectations of the process, right? And maybe they don't get hired. Well, the good news is 69% of people that had a good candidate experience are going to, I'm sorry, 62%, are going to apply again. And they're going to refer people. So, you know, the end goal of what we're trying to get to in this conversation is the fact that whether you have a Wayfair-sized program, whether you do what Monster does, or whether you do what HubSpot does, you know, or if you just try to do something a little bit different, a little bit more self-promoting, and a little bit more based on around your employment brand and your culture, what you're doing is creating that value of employment brand, which really drives engagement in the niche market. Fish where the fish are is what they say. And that's where you're going to start seeing the value of increase when it comes to your talent pipelines. And this is what delivers that. Why? Because millennials and Gen Z, they're more tech savvy. They're going to find out information about you online. They will find out information about you online, regardless of what you think. So information and content like this, publicly visible in the market, is going to provide that value to this audience and allows them to access information and what it is to work for you, which is super important, because they want to know what it's like to work for whatever company you work for, good or bad.
Speaking on that topic, are you guys worried about this being like a Glassdoor nightmare over time?
The question is, are we worried about it being a Glassdoor nightmare over time? We have gotten some bad reviews on Glassdoor as a result of this. And I think there was a period when our recruiters were not doing as good a job of being clear about setting people's expectations before they came in the door. So if you go to Glassdoor, you'll see 2 or 3 reviews where people are like, Wayfair Labs is a bait and switch, it's terrible, you know, don't do it. It hasn't been a problem for us. We've been able to hire the class sizes that we're looking for pretty much across the board. In fact, at this point, we have raised the bar pretty significantly and are still getting great people in the door. I feel very strongly about being totally honest with our candidates. So I started at Wayfair in April. We got some negative reviews in the summer, which I think was a sort of holdover from the previous group of recruiters and how that was working. I'm not too worried about it because I feel like at this point we're being as forthright and honest with the folks coming through the process as we can be. I totally understand that it's stressful for people, but I think that by treating people like grown-ups and being honest about the process, we're sort of trimming the likelihood of getting that kind of negative press on Glassdoor and others.
So run with that, do you see the positive feedback on the flip side, or is the person scorned more likely to complain loudly?
I have to admit, I actually don't look at our Glassdoor reviews all I think that we, in general, have great reviews as an employer. It's a pretty awesome place to work, and we're hiring enough people through labs that that I'm not too worried that the negative feedback, it's not like that's an overwhelming part of the feedback on Glassdoor for us. And we're also always happy to put candidates in touch with someone who's been through labs, so if they have some anxiety about it, you know, we're happy to have them have that conversation. So no, that really hasn't been a concern or an issue so far.
Like always, the negative
Well,
person
that's what I was
gets
curious
the-
about.
that's
The
like
other person's always the
every-
loudest, right? So
Yeah.
is it something where over time, you're only gonna get the negative reviews and not the positive?
We haven't seen a negative review in several months about labs.
So on the feedback front, are you collecting internal feedback? Like how are you engaging how well you're doing?
Yeah, so we're in the process of crunching some numbers on what is the success from a, you know, sort of how are the employees who've gone through labs doing compared to folks who didn't go through labs. And so I don't have those numbers yet because HR is working on them as we speak. But I think we're doing pretty well. And sorry, I sort of lost my train of thought. Can you say your question again?
I was just curious how you were collecting feedback.
Yes, so we're also doing focus groups. So HR has just done a round of focus groups. We got pretty good feedback. We got some constructive suggestions that I think are going to be very possible to implement. And we're planning to do quarterly focus groups with graduates of the program going forward.
Do you get any like resistance from other parts of the business about keeping employees for so long on the business?
No, we haven't gotten any pushback on keeping people through this program. You know,
It's all engineering. So yeah, like I'm not getting people as quickly, but like I'm getting good people. And from day zero, this is what you expect. Like you don't go out and like put out a requisition for like a level 1 employee for 6 months from now. You just say, hey, I need a new L1. They're like, all right, cool. Let's figure out who gets them, and you just grab one off the top of the pile, basically. So like, there's no delay from where I sit. Sorry.
Makes sense. All right, we're getting to the end of tonight, so just one more question, please.
No.
Do you feel like you have just as many people like self-selecting out of your process when they find out that this has to labs occurs, then they might have a chance of not being able to make it through and hence producing better quality candidates? Is that lower in the funnel?
That's a great question, and I would have to ask my recruiters that. I don't really get involved in knowing anything about a candidate until they've gone through I don't really see anything about a candidate until just before the culture interview. So our recruiters do the initial phone screen. They're managing the conversation between the candidate and the initial technical screens. And it's only after someone passes a technical screen that they come to me. So it may indeed be that we are losing people in the process who get anxious about the possibility of not having a job in 3 months. And that people are self-selecting out about that. And what I would say in as kind and gentle a way as I could is, great. Like I totally see that this is not necessarily the program for everyone, and that's okay. In spinning up the program, we had some challenges in having the pipeline really be sort of functional and getting the kind of candidates that we need, but at this point we have a great machine going. We've got 2 recruiters working on it, and they're bringing me awesome candidates almost every day.
Can I just ask something? I just want to ask something in the program. Personally, since I've been through the program, it's not as high stress as everyone thinks. Like, literally, there are such amounts of like periodic assessment telling you like what can you be improved on, and are you actually improving on this? So nothing should ever come as a surprise. Yeah, so it's not like they're trying to get you fired during the period of time. It's really just the period of time for you to learn what's the internal way to do things, and if you can do it.
I think I have one final question. I'm really not supposed to be doing this or allowed to do this, but I'm going to do this anyways. So we've got Monster here, super well-known company up here. Wayfair, super well-known company up here. You guys came from Athena Health, super well-known company. So there's a lot of companies in the audience, well, HubSpot, super well-known company. A lot of companies in the audience aren't super well-known, really hard to do this kind of stuff. So Matt, I'm gonna steal you for this question because you have inside knowledge of a lot of how different companies do things just because what your company does. So can you sort of give some inside baseball knowledge to what you see other companies doing that maybe don't have the same cool factor? And not saying that everyone's companies here aren't cool, but just don't have like, you know, the brand
recognition.
Yeah, so I'll start this with a really quick story. So I was presenting at South by Southwest with the head of recruiting from a very well-known social media company. I'll put it like that. They had some significant challenges in their leadership. Prior to that challenge, they used to receive between 150 and 200,000 applicants per year with 0 job postings. Let that sink in for a second. 200,000 applicants with no job postings. No problem recruiting. Change of the brand, change in the company leadership, change of their strategy, negative impacts, negative. It went down to 25,000. So what are they doing now? Paying for job postings, right? So company brand is super important. So if you're a small business out here, or you're a co-founder, or you're somebody that's an executive at a startup organization, the brand that you create within your company is your employment brand for right now. Right? And I think every organization in here that's trying to hire technology people is struggling to hire technology people. And the reason we're doing that is because we're all fishing in this same massive pond, catching the same macros. I've hired Wayfair people, Wayfair have hired Monster people, we've hired HubSpot people, HubSpot have hired our people, and it just goes around the circle of people, probably, by the way, within Mass TLC. So what you're gonna do as an organization, and what I think helps my team really excel at hiring like we do, is really understanding what do we do as a company that is more than work, right? And what Wayfair is doing here is they're not bringing you in as an employee, they're bringing you in as part of their family, right? So you're now part of their family. You're ingrained in their culture, their DNA, because they've invested in you already out of the gate, and they've trained you, and they've developed you to become something special, not just another employee. You're working on a special project, super secret, probably, out of the gate. You know, what do? We bring somebody in, we're like, you know, I think I got a laptop for you somewhere, let me fish through this pile of papers. You know, so the experiences we create, first impressions are last impressions. First, the experiences we create is what really is going to define your employee's experience. So, you know, what you got to do as an organization is recognize what your employment brand is. And what is your noble purpose? What are you providing to an employee besides a job and a salary? You know, when you look at the millennial and Gen Z audience, that's what good companies do really well, is they provide that noble purpose. What are you doing on top of giving them some cash to go buy whatever they want to buy, hopefully some Lagunitas and some King's Donuts. But aside from that, what are you providing to them that's actually going to provide value to them intrinsically as a person? What am I doing for the world that's better than what I'm doing today? And that's what your company has to provide as a small business. And that's what I see good small businesses do really well, is sell the value of what you're giving to society. And then when you look at from a programmatic value, these companies that hire really well and are excelling as an organization and is growing, is they're so tied into their talent that they know what great talent is before they see it, right? Because typically, the atypical hiring manager has no idea what a great piece of talent is until it is sitting in front of them and they're 45 minutes into an interview and they're like, where have you been all my life? So these companies that understand this, Wayfair for instance, Monster, I don't know about HubSpot, we'll give you the benefit of the doubt. They know what great talent looks like because they've created a mental science mind. But you as a hiring manager have the ability to sit down and do that. How do you do that? Is you look at the skills of your role, you turn those skills into behaviors, right? So you look at the very specific skill requirements of the position, you turn those into behaviors, so you can become a mini psychologist and understand what kind of behaviors drive high performers in that specific role for your organization. And that's what I've seen companies do that have worked with really well. Will it work for you? Maybe, maybe not. But the idea here is, even as a small business owner, you have the ability to go out to a market and really recognize the talent that's out there. You know, there's plenty of job boards. I'll plug Monster, Shore, Career Builder, whatever, that have data and analytics behind the scene to help you understand the talent ecosystem, so you can break that down into a little bit more of a numerical science, So that when you get to that one perfect candidate, you know you've done your due diligence. So now you got to start quantifying what that great talent is. And that's going to help you get to your goal program. Everybody give a round of applause to Wayfair. Fantastic job. Thank you, Rosa.
Applause for Matt from Monster. So Matt, thanks for that pep talk and also sneak preview of the fact that this is actually an event series. We are planning on replicating this quarterly for the next year between Mass TLC and General Assembly. So this is the first of 4. The next one we are going to do on employee branding or employer branding. It sounds like that's a topic that people are interested in. Definitely kind of like blends really well. And then we're always looking for suggestions. We have some ideas of what the next ones are going to be, but definitely reach out to me, reach out to Christine or Mike from Mass TLC. Tell us what you're looking for. If you work for a company and you think you guys are doing something that's super cool in talent, let us know. We can have you up here. So we really want this to be a conversation. And we hope you come to our next event, which will be in April. We don't have a date yet, but we'll let you know when we do. And that you bring a friend to that. And yeah, apply to be a new co-host. Come talk to us if you have questions and talk to each other. Thanks a lot.